have to say, this movie we're going to talk about is one of the biggest surprise of the year of me going into the theater, and I recommend do not watch the trailer, just go and see it.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, as somebody who never watches the trailers,
yeah,
I can't say that I was wrong to not do it.
So, we're going to talk about a horror movie that has a twist on itself and another twist. We're going to talk Strange Darling.
Yeah. Welcome back to the show, everybody. I'm the Demon, Kyle Goethe.
And I'm the Electric Lady. I'm Nick for the St. Paul Filmcast. Thanks for finding. Thanks for watching. For our loyal fans, thank you for continuing to support the show. Another way you can support the show, I'm going to say it. You know I'm going to say it. Join the Patreon. Join it.
I like that idea.
Yeah, great content, great deals, and the opportunity to tell us a movie that we can review on a future episode. Of course, a shout out to you as well. So, we're talking about a horror movie that's getting a lot of traction. My order is going to come in the mail. It's going to come after Halloween. My copy of this. So what's going on with Strange Darling?
You know what the best time to watch horror movies is?
What?
All the times. When two individuals take part in a one-night stand, they don't realize that it will become a twisted game of cat and mouse involving one of them as a serial killer and their next victim.
All right, so heads up, this is a review, so if you haven't seen the movie, please do, because we can't talk about it without revealing some of the twists and turns and psychological things that are incorporated in the movie without, giving a little bit out.
If you haven't seen the film, pause now.
Yes.
I believe when this is going to drop on the YouTubes, tomorrow should be the day that you can rent Strange Darling, digitally speaking, or you can just, buy it.
Okay, so many of the criticisms about this movie is, and I'm seeing a lot of critics talk about, it's really a stylized over substance. There's not much there, but I think the writers and the creators of it knew this, and this is why the story isn't linear. They, if they broke it up in entanglements, I think intentionally, I don't know, it'd be nice to be in the writer's room about this, about do we do this way or do it the other way, or do we just fragment it on a bulletin board and do it that way?
Yeah.
But
it's
I
definitely
think this
like
is
that.
intentionally style over substance.
When you look at, I've never seen anything J.T. Molnar's done outside of this film as a director and writer. He did this film called Outlaws and Angels. A few people I know have seen the film. They were positive on it, but kind of middle to positive. So I don't know what he was able to bring to it from a purely writing standpoint. The idea was essentially they were opening up after COVID shut down.
Okay.
He wanted to do something a bit smaller scale, something he could easily do, and within 6 months of having the idea, he was filming. So that's the kind of quick trajectory this movie took. But it's definitely a case where the studio didn't understand what they were dealing with, but I do appreciate that they were willing to let Molnar prove them wrong. Right. They came back and actually shut down production for 2 days because they hated all the footage that was coming in. They thought the movie looked terrible. They did not like anything that was showing up.
Wow, I'd love to see that because it really is saturated.
Yeah, at the very least, the daily should have looked good.
And the cinematographer is like Giovanni Ribisi. Not the same guy, is it?
He's the Avatars. Yeah, he was the or Horizon Chapter 1. It's actor Giovanni Ribisi has been interested in cinematography for a while and decided to just get involved in it.
He's a cinematographer for this.
Yeah, interesting tale.
Are you kidding me?
But the studio, they actually wanted Willa Fitzgerald to be replaced. They wanted her fired. They did not like the idea of the non-linear system, and so they actually forced someone else into the editing bay to edit the film linearly. But thankfully, thanks to a Directors Guild of America rule, Molnar was allowed to screen his director's cut.
Final cut.
So he was allowed to screen it at the very least.
Okay.
And that had a rousing success compared to the middling results of the other screenings. So they were willing to kind of let him do his thing.
Right.
But thankfully the DGA kind of saved the film on this one because I think it would have turned out terrible linearly.
After all the explanations that Kyle gives, it's still, I like to support single creator visions instead of corporate films of sequels. Support this movie. Yeah. It's a great it's an indie film. It's an indie horror film, for God's sakes. Yeah.
I think Miramax acquired the film, but Miramax isn't really the same Miramax that they used to be.
Not from like the 90s.
They definitely don't have that kind of standing anymore. But you're right. When you look at a film like this, the weekend that we were recording this actually is the same weekend that We Live in Time comes out, which is a romance film that is kind of the same way. It jumps around in time, maybe more frequently than this film. But I'm really starting to dig the idea of involving the audience in the puzzle. When this movie started and it said Chapter 3, I said, oh, cool, we're doing a Star Wars thing. Where we start in the middle of the story and then jump around.
Yeah.
But they're doing it all there. Right, within the movie itself.
But I think if you explain it linearly, it doesn't have the punch. But the whole punch is you don't understand they're really good, two dynamic characters.
Yeah.
I loved it intentionally cast Kyle Gallner, who's played these sinister people in 2 previous movies. The Passenger one also.
Oh yeah.
Great casting choice.
Well, Kyle Gallner is one of those guys that 13 years ago, 15 years ago even, was doing these horror films, doing these genre films. He's kind of a scream king, almost, in some ways. Kind of like Justin Long, where he's like really taking on like a male like horror financial.
Right, he's been on social media. See this movie, I'm coming after you, just like in the movie. Right,
but 15 years ago, I mean, there was Kyle Gallner playing like the loser, the goth, the nerd, and it was just it never felt right to me. It never felt like he was being used.
But this feels right.
like that. But this feels like kind of the type of roles he was supposed to do. You know, this and Smile and The Passenger.
I think sound is essential for this. The sound, the cut of the sounds. You know, are you a serial killer? Then you cut to him strangling her.
Yeah.
And then the music and like, I'm not. Why would you even ask that? And it's a temperament of like we're witnessing as it happens. We feel like we're part of like we're looking in this window the entire time. It seems stylized shots, but it almost feels like it's a documentary. Also,
well, it's introduced with that great Jason Patrick narration about from like 2018 to 2020, a serial killer was moving through the country taking people out. This is part of that story.
Yeah.
Which is a great throwback to like Texas Chainsaw Massacre kind of stuff. It's introduced in that way where I did have to look up after the film was done if it was based on a true story, and the director still has not said if it was based on any elements of true stories.
No, right. I have to go back to that. We have to nitpick because we are film critics. I'm just not really sold on the ending. I understand what they're trying to convey. I had the same kind of problem with In a Violent Nature with their ending.
I was thinking about that too.
Yeah. Horror movies. And then it's a kind of a criticism I have for all movies. They just don't really stick the landing for me. And this one, I think they knew what they wanted to do, but they just kind of stretch it out even more than we wanted to. But I think they want to hold some kind of empathy for the ending that I'm just not going to get.
Yeah, and what it did was kind of a variation on what I was hoping it would do in some ways, which is that we go back to chapter 2 as like that's the final piece of the puzzle we hadn't seen yet.
Yeah.
But my favorite thing was I was like, okay, they said 6 chapters, but what if they just go like chapter 7? What if they and they kind of did that to an extent. Yeah. But you're right, everything that took place in that epilogue, once we get the meat of it out of the way, it lost a lot of steam for me. It started slowing down. The elements post figuring all of it out didn't really have that same kind of impact. In fact, it kind of made me like the characters less.
Yeah, and I the reason for the serial killer seeing visions, I'd like to see a little more of that. I'd see it's a little more snippet, like almost like Fight Club snips, but I'd like to see a little more punch to that psychology than that. But I do like it. The whole entrapments. I like it. She goes to Ed Begley's family, that Begley Jr.'s family. The cut of the food almost looks like, it reminds me of The Substance when you see that. Like, are we doing The Substance here again? Oh my God, with the food and everything.
Yeah. Shout out to the guy on Letterboxd who pointed out that he was in a quiet theater until someone used a stick of butter to make 3 eggs and the entire theater lost their minds.
They're hippies, right?
They're some kind of cooks, I'll tell you.
Yeah. Just saturated. Right, yeah. But I was intrigued the entire time. I was in it until the last 2 minutes of the movie, where I just kind of like, let's go here.
Yeah, I felt like through most of the chapters, I think chapter 2, when we start to put all the evidence together, I started kind of just, the revelations didn't work for me as well. I mean, this was the best version of those events because of the nonlinear story, but I started to just kind of like both the characters less and find both of them less interesting the more I learned about what was going on.
Yeah, if that's one valid criticism about this movie, even though I really appreciate it.
Yeah,
is the more that you get revealed, the more it like deflates the story.
Yeah, but again, shot really well. I will say I don't think that the Lady and the Demon should have been called the Lady and the Demon, because I think it gives you the expectation of something that's not going to happen. In the sense that when we realize the serial killer of the story, I feel like calling him the demon doesn't really
I've always been a fan, and I've always done it with my writer groups. Give them a name rather than just a title.
Well, I don't even mind the title. I just don't like that title in specific.
Something like the King. Well, I want something more than just call somebody just the King. I want like a name to it. The Lady. Well, give me more. I know you want it to be baseless. I know you want to be as bland as possible, but give me a name. Just call him Kyle.
Even if we call him something else throughout the whole film, but we know his name, that's fine.
Yeah.
But I think Willa Fitzgerald is somebody who I'll be honest, I undervalued when I saw her. She was on the TV series Scream. the one that was based on the films.
Yeah.
She was in the first season of that show, and then she was really great in Fall of the House of Usher. So
I know it sounds, but that's really good acting in your underwear and bra, man.
It's hard to do.
You're showing everybody, especially that nice toilet scene, which is not romantic at all. It's not salacious at all. She's just, and then she throws it to the toilet.
Yeah.
The toilet.
I think they were both very vulnerable in those scenes, and I have to imagine that it might have felt better actually to have a cinematographer who's been an actor, who's been in those vulnerable scenes, to be up close with you during that, because he understands maybe what you're going through. But yeah, Giovanni Ribisi is the MVP of the film.
And I'm talking about this, and I'm talking to myself. I might nominate it as Best Cinematography of the Year. Just throw it out there to just get support for indie films.
Yeah, because people are saying you shouldn't have said out loud that your film was shot on 35mm, because there's a big title card that comes up and celebrates it, and I'm like, you can celebrate it. It's okay. Yeah. It's kind of like how the cool kids are listening to vinyls.
Yeah, and I love the play of red. The cars are red. His shirt is red. Mm-hmm. The scrubs are red. There's this wonderful play of horror movies where things are red. So it's all the things I love watching movies, and I'm making a short horror film, and we talked about it. You have to talk style first, because that's the thing that people are going to critique. Get your style down, and I think this is his style.
I think it's got a strong style. I think Ribisi should, I love him as an actor, so I hope he continues acting. But I do hope that he does this as well. That he can kind of divide his time well. Because obviously he wasn't doing much acting in the first Horizon film, being in it for only 8 seconds.
No, we haven't seen part 2 yet.
One funny thing about Ribisi is they mentioned Gary Gilmore in the film as being during their final altercation in the house. Well, Ribisi actually played Gilmore's brother in a 2001 film.
Where the hell did you dig that up? Dang it.
So I think that's kind of funny that it kind of comes full circle to
I want that kind of execution. Right.
But give me more movies with chapters. I know I say it's one of those weird aesthetics that doesn't really matter in the long run.
This one does.
But I love movies with chapters.
Yeah.
Especially ones where they invert the idea and make me think a whole new way about them.
Right, yeah. So, keep the conversation going. What do you think of our assessment of Strange Darling? It's available to rent after we put this up, so check it out.
Yeah.
Again, I'm gonna have to watch this again.
Well, and let us know in the comment section too, because one of the things I have heard from at least people was that they were concerned about the nonlinear nature. Did the nonlinear nature confuse you, or did it make sense? I found like it wasn't too much jumping around, where it was it worked still. But I have heard from some people that they were like, I didn't like that variation.
I just want to process. Did you write it linear and then you take fragments and on a billboard, or you wrote it this way and then just?
I think editing this movie linearly, I wouldn't watch it again.
Right.
And that's not to say it would be a bad movie, but you learn way too much early on in the film. So yeah, let us know what you thought down in the comment section below. Thank you so much for joining us for another episode of Kyle and Nick on Film. You can check out all of my written film reviews over at goatfilmreviews.com. We're still in the middle of the 31 Days of Horror, so go ahead and check it out.
We have a lot
of good horror things. Yep. Yeah. And some cool things. We're doing some unboxings this year. We're doing some Saturday Scares with Kyle involved in there as well. And you'll also see some of my Twin Cities Film Festival coverage, which is going there, because I actually am serving on the prize team. They are giving out the Best in Show for the Minnesota Film Critics Alliance. So check that out.
And I'm Nick for the St. Paul Filmcast, and for God's sakes, work on your endings.